guys, good morning. We shall continue our class, and the area that we're going to look at today would be the area concerning postmodernist jurisprudence. And postmodern jurisprudence, the heading of the uh, thinking of jurisprudence would be Jürgen Habermas, and he mentioned about the importance of the review with respect to the conflict of laws in pluralist legal system, because to him the problem, the reality of the world today is that we have so many plural legal system that exist throughout the world, and obviously when you have many or various legal system, there is going to be a conflict of laws. If we are talking about the concept of law from one legal system is totally different from another definition or interpretation of law from another system. So for example, you have law that is so-called identified as barbaric, yeah, which we can see some Middle East countries are applying from the perspective that is totally different from the Western world. And obviously from the Middle East, they would see the Western world as the other way, barbaric, in terms of they have no reality of morality and things like that. So everything, the notion of each other towards another, uh, is actually based on the notion of law, and this is a problem, and this is the problem that needs to be resolved, and the area that is focusing by the postmodernist jurisprudence, i.e. Habermas. Okay, this is Jürgen Habermas, and by nature he is a pragmatist, meaning pragmatism is more concerned about the outcome rather than the process. Meaning, if you were to implement law, okay, the law that you apply is more he is more concerned about the effects or the application of the law as compared to the process of the law. Okay, if you can see from our previous jurisprudence, it is more about to trying to determine the law first in order for the law to make sense. Okay, for example, we have Austin. He defined the concept of law in order for the law later to be valid. And then we have Augustine, Aquinas, from naturalists. He says that everything must be according to the nature of the reality. Then, if it's done in that nature, then the outcome of the law that you create would be the law that can produce uh, true justice. So, as far as Austin and naturalists is concerned, they are providing justice in their own perspective, but they are more concerned of the process rather than the outcome. As compared to Habermas, it is more concerned about the outcome of the law. And as you know, we are here in the process of learning jurisprudence 2, which is basically about realism, about the reality. So law is more towards reality. Therefore, we are doing our studies with respect to Jürgen Habermas in the process of understanding the rallies that we have throughout the world. Jürgen Habermas is said to be one of the most important thinkers today that exists throughout the world. And why they are important? Because they would want us to think first before we were to create any laws. You know, uh, obviously you want to prepare yourself first in order for you to do something. So you equip yourself with things. You understand. You make sure that you know things prior for you to activate the thing that you wanted to do. If you want to do anything, obviously you build up your skills in order for you to do it successfully. You don't want to go through the process of learning and making mistakes, you know, trying to make things better one stage to another. It is a wasteful time if we were to do that. So he is proposing that we are to look at things in terms of understanding the nature of the situation prior for us to embark into the process, the next process, i.e., in this case, the process of creating law. Habermas is a philosopher and sociologist. As you know, it is not only a person that philosophizes about something in his nature, maybe he philosophizes areas concerning or criticize about areas very much related to society, sociology, religion, politics, and he is able to come up with his idea, and his idea is very much related to the society in terms of the impact, i.e., sociological perspective in nature. Habermas, he is very much into what we call he is a believer of critical theory. Now, critical theory means that they criticize this group of people. They criticize a lot about so many things, and the basic thing about critical thinkers is that they are they don't want to be bound by the stigmatization of things. They don't want to be bound by ideas. They just want to be able to be free in terms of identifying things for themselves. They don't want rules and norms to guide them into believing what is the thing that they are to understand. They want to criticize things. They want to see things differently. They want to identify things in a very different perspective. And to them, as far as law is concerned, law is not to be, imposed. The idea of law to be imposed on them. It is for the people to understand what is the meaning of the law. And to know about the meaning of the law, you must criticize the law. You must be able to be free to do some analyzation of the law and to critique about the law. Yeah? So basically, they are critical thinkers. They critiques a lot. So everything they can, it is open for them to critics. And they are not bound by any hard rules. Pragmatism is a philosophical tradition whereby, in order to understand the world, we have to understand the practical working of the thing that you are doing. Okay, so for example, if you create law, you have to understand the impact of the law. If you want to claim that the law is true or the law is good, so the only thing that you are able to say and to claim that it is good is by looking at its usefulness, whether the law is going to be having its usefulness or not. If it's not useful, then the law is not considered as a good law. Habermas offer theories on communicative rationality, which means that communicative rationality means that you have a reason when it comes to communication. So people went into communication because there is a reason for them to do so. And the communication relationship that one established with another is something that is going to be useful. Otherwise, you won't be communicating to one another. You communicate with your friends. There must be a reason for you to establish that communication form. If it's not useful, then obviously you don't want to communicate in the first place. So enter into a communication with another person for you to be able to achieve something, you know. And if two person are to be able to communicate with one another, obviously the fruits of that communication is something that is very real. And this is what we call communicative rationality. Now, this communication involves the public spheres, where it is a discussion, a communicative relationship that you establish in the public sphere in order whereby individuals can come together to freely discuss and identify societal problems, and for them to discuss and influence political action, where people gather together in a group, right, in order for them uh, to think and to establish, to identify, to determine one problem. Okay, you have meetings. Okay, you have gatherings. We have a session that you establish between your friends. Say for example, you want to go out to have an outside activity. Obviously you would have some kind of gathering, and that gathering is mainly focusing about one particular issue. You establish that gathering to establish a communication, and that communication is in the scope of public sphere, you know. And say for example, you go into the internet, you establish some kind of discussion among netizen about a particular issue of your concern. Okay? So you're concerned about subject matter X, and then you wanted to have a discussion about it, and you have people that also wanted to talk about X. So therefore, you engage in terms of communicating with each other, and that is what we call a public sphere uh, communication. In order for you to be able to establish some kind of reality. So this public debate, yeah, it normally takes place in the mass media, yeah, and obviously social media, academic publication, government policy documents, yeah. These are the medium that you establish in order for you to have that communication. Say for example, for researchers, they would establish a discussion in journals whereby they can each other produce articles, and from that articles or research they conducted, they can discuss about the subject matter of their interest. So this is the medium whereby people engage in a public sphere in order for them to be able to communicate with one another. So as you can see here, Habermas is belonging to the group of sociologists that you can see in this slide. When we see Weber, we have Parson, we have William James, we have also Karl Marx that you have learned earlier on, Immanuel Kant in Juris 1, Durkheim, if you were to be introduced to him in Juris 1. All this group of people are basically sociologists, and their main concern is about the society. uh, if you're talking about law, law is part of the uh, sociologist point or concern. Yeah? But we are here to learn about the effect of law with regards to the sociologists that we want to know. So here we want to look at the perspective of the law with respect of the idea of Habermas being a sociologist. I'm giving you one example here. We are looking at Max Weber. He's a sociologist, and being a sociologist, he wants to study about the society. And his main concern is about the division of labor, how labor is being utilized, the need for the labor to be united in order for it to be able to produce good result to the society, good outcome, whereby the society progress. Now, if he is talking alone with respect to labor, uh, that alone is you know is not going to be correct, because when it comes to labor, there are main concern with regards to law, because law is a intricate component of the labor organization or labor system that we have in our society. As a critical theory person, in order for us to understand the whole scenario, we have to access and look at the knowledge of the society in terms of their sciences and humanities, how people interact with one another. And if you study that, then you start to realize that ideology, you know, they discovered that obviously, the ideology is the main principal obstacle that prevent people from having their own liberation, meaning they are unable to explore because the stigmatization of the stigma of the society in terms of new knowledge or new ideas. Okay, this is from Max Horkheimer, where he says that to liberate human beings from circumstances that enslave themselves, okay, we actually enslave ourselves in this position whereby we don't want to seek new knowledge because we are so afraid of making mistakes or finding something that is newer, because we are tied down with the ideology that we have, that we carry either to our own, either to by our friends, our families, our uh, relative, our society, our culture, yeah, our norms. So those are the things that prevent us from finding or moving forward to find something that is better. Whether it is better or not, that is something that is for us to find out, rather than us to stay at the status quo and be pleasant with what we have. So this is what he's trying to say, and this is something that we have to acknowledge. Since we are talking about pragmatism, then let's look at the so-called the idea behind pragmatism itself. It began in the United States around 1870 with philosophers like William James, John Dewey, Charles Sanders Peirce. You can find them out. Uh, you can see them down there. And obviously, they have this so-called maxim. Yeah? Their maxim is like this: consider the practical effects of the object of your conception. If you consider something that you wanted to do, you have to consider the effects of the object that you want to do. So if, say, for example, you want to hit someone just because you are angry, obviously you have to look forward, you know, at the effect of your action prior for you from you to do that so-called action, right? Then your conception of this effect is the whole of your conception of the object. Meaning, if you look at the effect is going to be you ending up in jail. Obviously, you're not going to do the action in the first place of hitting someone else. So that is the basis of pragmatism, Marxism. So pragmatism focuses on the changing universe rather than unchanging ones, as what we can see from idealists, realists, and Thomas. Thomas, he is referring to Thomas, had claimed. Pragmatism emphasized the practical application of ideas by acting on them to actually test them in human experiences. So we are looking at the changing universe that we are living in right now. Okay, so the universe that we are living right now is more towards reality. They don't want to be bogged down with ideology, with ideas, with normative rules, religious ideologies, and so on, right? And those things, it is past. It is something that is no longer relevant. Pragmatism, they emphasize on practical application. Yeah? It is more of practical in nature. If it's practical, then if it's useful, if the result is good, if the result is beneficial, then it is good for us to apply. And how to do that is actually to test them by looking at the human experiences. Now, pragmatism considers words and thoughts as tools. And when you have thoughts and words as tools, they are actually the instrument for our ability to predict, to solve problem, or taking actions. Either we want to accept or reject the ideas, that is being described or present, uh, which is going to either reflect reality or not. Okay, so nobody is to force us into believing something that they want us to believe. It is something for us to be able to use our words, meaning our communication, and our thoughts as our tools in order for us to find out the reality of that particular situation that we are discussing. So, for example, you're talking about the reality of poverty in our society, or basically some of the one of the ministers some time ago said that the poor people, they deserve to be in that position because they don't want to work, and that is their nature. They are a burden to the society. That is something that we have to sit down and discuss. Without the ability for us to use our words, without us to be able to go into the public sphere, into a discussion, an open discussion, just because you want to uh, prove something is right or wrong, we have to get into discussion of that nature. uh, let's go into another area that involving the Malay rights. Yeah, so for example, that is something that some people are so sensitive about, and they actually will come up with the notion that if you want to talk about this, you don't have any rights to be a citizen of Malaysia, and you just get out. And then, so by rejecting some sort of discussion, a common discussion that can be conducted to solve a problem that is prevailing in our society, it is going to be something that is negative. So what we need to do is to utilize the instruments, which is the words and thoughts, as our tools to solve the problems. And pragmatists sees most philosophical topics, the nature of knowledge, language, concept, meanings, belief, and science, are all best viewed in terms of their practical uses and successes. Successes. So, pragmatism is a philosophical study of necessary condition for reaching an understanding through communication. So, basically, in order for us to reach an understanding about something or anything, we have to communicate. We cannot be relying on ideology in order for us to believe in certain things. We have to sit down. We have to have a quorum. We have to communicate with one another in order for us to get the real understanding of the thing. So understanding here, it means that the very least, when two or more social actors share the same meaning about certain words or phrases, and the very most, when these actors are confident that those meanings fit relevant social expectation. So, for example, if you were to discuss about a problem that you face between you and your friend, you will try to sort it out in terms of trying to communicate things that goes between you. Somebody said something about the other person, and you want to confront that person, trying to get the truth, and you establish that communication. When you establish that communication, at the end of the communication, you either agree to agree or agree to disagree, right? But at least you are able to come to a conclusion, yeah, between yourself, towards what do you expect of the next step that you need to do. Okay, if say for example your relationship bogs down to the reality by the end of the discussion is that you don't trust that person, then you make a step of that nature, that you don't want to be that person's friends anymore. But if it's so happened from the communication that you discover that the things that have been told about you by another person, is not true, because you can uh, sort it out and find out the truth, then you establish that relationship again. So that is something that is worthwhile for us to do. So the goal of coming to an understanding is intersubjective mutuality, shared knowledge, mutual trust, and accordance to one another. So this is something that is normal for us to understand. This is not something new, yeah. So, but this is something that is pragmatic, something that is important for us to identify. If we can understand this uh, simple concept, where you need to communicate, establish what is the problem, find solution, then the outcome is a pragmatic result. And the pragmatic result would be the best result that you can achieve. If, say, for example, you cannot have that communication with one other person, that for example, you just mentioned just now, somebody talks bad about you, X accuse you, and then you confront X and saying that, did you really tell me about bad things about me? It can be resolved by that discussion, and you can find the truth with it. And if you were to be able to have that understanding, that solve a lot of issues in the world, actually, right? We have a situation whereby war that we go into is based on the inability for us to communicate in the first place. Okay, we live in a bubble whereby every country live in their own, trying to protect their own citizen, whereas they do not communicate with others. They do not live in a group situation whereby they can sit down and discuss. This happened in before World War One, before World War Two. People are so fearing towards one another. So they have doubts. They have ill intention about other people. They don't want. They have a problem, but they don't want to discuss with other people. But that seems to be the big problem that uh, that instigate or that created that World War, the two World Wars that we have. But now, in order to do that, we have United Nations, whereby we can sit down. Any problems that we face in the world can be discussed. We have forums, we have trade unions, yeah. We have what do you got? You have agencies. For example, we have ASEAN, where we can discuss matters that is concerning uh, the states, yeah, the member states. For ASEAN, for example, we have what they call it, just to share with you, we have an area, we call it the triangle, yeah, the golden triangle, in terms of the oil, yeah, that is the sea that is belonging to three countries, yeah, of the state of Terengganu, right? So this area, the triangle, is claimed by Thailand, Malaysia, and Vietnam. No, three countries are claiming the same resources. So if we were to not having any discussion, we don't have any forum where we can sit down, send representatives, sit down and negotiate and come to a conclusion through communication, then obviously we would go to war because everyone sees that the area is theirs. It's a dispute. Rather than having dispute, let's sit down, try to communicate, try to find out the solution, and the solution would be a solution that is pragmatic, that is going to benefit all. It so happen now, what we are doing right now with that area is that we have companies that go and drill oil there, but the income of the generation of oil recovery there is to be shared by the countries themselves. We divide by three. Rather than going to war, which is not going to benefit anyone, but we are having some kind of understanding, which the understanding is good for the benefit of our mutual existence. So this is what he is trying to say. Communication is very, very much, very, very important in order for the society to proceed, to progress, to elevate their status to a better society. Because basically, remember the first slide, we are living in a plural legalistic system. You know, we have a legal system that is various in nature. So how do we live with one another? Because these legal systems are having their own constraint, restriction, and the only way to overcome this restriction, uh, boundaries, is for us to sit down and discuss. And the way we can discuss is through communication. That is pragmatic. All right. So thank you. That's all for the day. Take care.